am Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. Welcome to episode 6 of our Real Life Sabbatical series, What I Did on Location on a Regular Writing Day. This is a super long title to kind of capture where I am in the sabbatical process at this moment. If you just started this podcast or just picked this episode super randomly, I'm on sabbatical from January 2024 till the end of July of 2024. So I'm technically off work for the spring semester, but the time that I'm spending on location at Ohio State University in Project Narrative extends till July 31st. So that's the timeline that I'm giving myself and why I'm not in a panic that it's mid-March when I'm recording this episode and I don't have a whole lot done. So what I want to do now is I'm going to share a screen to show my planning process for what I'm going to do when I'm on location tomorrow at Ohio State and how I kind of made those decisions and what I'm doing to make sure that I'm actually getting some work done on my sabbatical. So here are a couple of different things that I'm thinking about at the moment. I always make a Penzu note. I've talked about Penzu tons of times, so I probably won't link to it in the show notes again, but if you want to go find any of our episodes on Penzu, just go to our YouTube channel, Defend, Publish, Lead, look up Penzu, and you'll see all kinds of wonderful things about it. I really should get them to be a podcast sponsor. I love them so much. But at this point, so I'm recording this episode, it's on March 21st, so I probably should have made my sabbatical plan read the 22nd, because that's the day that I'm going to be there. For the record, I don't like to actually do sabbatical work on location on Fridays. I, like everybody else, I kind of experienced hey, Friday's almost the start of the weekend. I don't feel like getting a lot done. But in this case, that's just how it worked out. That was the best day for me to go this week. So I'm going on a Friday. I also want to say just a quick update about where I am with some other things in the middle of the semester before talking about what I'm turning to for this. I had noted at the very beginning of the semester, I had a couple of other projects going on, one of which was that I had to submit a book proposal to a new publisher. I kind of changed publishers for a project for a lot of reasons, but in this case, it was a good decision. And so what had happened with that is I really had to work on getting that proposal to that publisher. I also had to finish up some legwork on another book where I had to rewrite some parts of an introduction for an edited collection that's also something that's with another publisher at the moment. So on both of those fronts, I have good news. So I had to do a couple of things for both of those projects to make them go. And so that did eat some of my time in late February, early March. But now I'm back to kind of thinking about, well, what else am I supposed to be doing on my sabbatical? So one of the things that is kind of a lesson for me, and this happens every semester as an academic, but we always have projects that we submitted and we put them out there in the world and then they go away for a really long time, but then they eventually come back. So sometimes it's bad news where you have to find another outlet. Sometimes it's mixed news, like they want it, but now you're going to have to do some work and maybe interrupt whatever it is you're working on right now. And then sometimes it's good news, but it still requires some work. And again, you need to drop whatever it is you're doing and work on that. So especially in the case of good news, I wasn't going to, worry about some projects that aren't complete yet, like my sabbatical projects I want to do. I want to get those other projects fully finished and close the loop on them. So that was a priority for me. I definitely took, between the two of them, I definitely took around almost 3.5 weeks to get them done. So I really haven't done a whole lot with my sabbatical other than kind of collecting some research to read, thinking through some ideas in my mind, taking a few notes, but nothing specific. And so I knew that tomorrow when I go on location, so as a refresher, I have to drive around 80-ish miles. I go down there and work all day and then come back. Sometimes I stay for more than one day, and I'll stay there for a couple of days, but this is just sort of one of those one-day trips. So I never go without a plan. And I'm always able to kind of think through what I want to get done there in the time that I have, because I know I'm driving for around an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes each way. So I'm not going to go down there and just waste a whole lot of time, drive there and drive back. I have been known to kind of think about it on the way, what I want to do, but I find that I do better if I think about it the day before. So here's something that I'm thinking about to try to pull off in a work day, and then I'll talk about how this might help other people that are on sabbatical. But one of the things I always put in my Penzu notes are just some reminders about what do I need to work on location somewhere else. So I always need the reminder about headphones, office stuff. I have an office down there. Last time I forgot to bring some office supplies that I know I need that are specific to me. Just like different highlighters and pens and stuff. I like to take notes on printed articles. So like that stuff I need to do, just kind of a vague question. I know I checked out a book out of their library. Do I need to return it? When is it due? What's happening? Where is this book? So those are just some just random things I know I need to think about before I leave. And then I made myself a little schedule based on what I'm actually going to be getting down there. So after I drop off one of my kids at school, I leave. And then I know the very first thing that I want to do, and I probably should have said somewhere that I'm going to get a really amazing, cup of coffee that's fancy. That should go without saying. I always like that when I'm working. So that will definitely be in there between parking and then going to the library where I'm going to work. As mentioned, I do have an office there, but I like to actually work in the library. So if I need to go get something or print something, I can go do it. But just in general, I've said it on the podcast lots of times, I just like a library vibe. So I do better in a library. So for me, I'm going to use that first 2 hours from 9:30 to 11:30 to just look at all the articles and things I already have. And I'm looking at them for very, very specific things. So one of the things I'm trying to decide at the moment on the current project that I'm working on is I know I want to interview or survey faculty, probably interview them using some kind of a narrative methodology. I'm in project narrative. I'm interested in the way that faculty tell stories about their writing processes. So I know that's sort of a vague goal. Where I'm struggling is kind of thinking about what's the best way to get that information, because I like a survey for the ability to reach more people, but I think I might get a more richer understanding through an interview. So I know there's a lot of different things that have to happen that I need to make some decisions, and I do have some good models. So one of the things I will be doing tomorrow is looking at these models and saying, I've got to make the call. Am I going to do maybe an initial survey to get some participants and then do interviews? Or am I going to do these interviews? Or is there something else? Would I do better with a case study or an ethnography? Or I really need to think through some of the methodological questions. I'm familiar with both surveys and interviews. I've used both of them in previous research. I'm fine with those, but I did get to thinking that maybe those are not the best way to kind of capture a story of a faculty writing process. So I know that I really need 2 hours to look at everything I have to decide, yes, I like these aspects. No, I don't like this thing. I'm definitely interested in the methodology because I need to think through, well, how am I going to build whatever it is I'm going to build? So some other things that I know that I'm looking for from looking at some articles I already have are a determination of what am I going to do with this once I have it? Because initially I was thinking I might write an article, because what I would write this article about would be how do faculty think or narrate, or how do they tell the story, or how do they think they get from an idea to a publication. Like I'm interested in that story. So it's basically a narrative about how they create a scholarly narrative, if that makes sense, a meta narrative. So I'm really interested in that. I don't know if that is something that should stay as just an article, or could it be worked into the current book project I'm working on writing project management. So I've got a bunch of things to unpuzzle, and I do better with this kind of like hard decision making and thinking if I put a time frame on it. So I'm not kind of digging around just loose, like thinking, oh, this is exploratory. I've already had one of those days. I've already done a podcast episode about, just having the joy of doing that. But now I've got enough stuff that I need to just start narrowing down. What am I actually doing? I don't know for sure, but I suspect this will probably stay as an article, because at the moment, I can't think of how it's going to go into the book project I already have unless I change the whole reframe over the book project I have. That book is going to be a more practical book on writing project management, and I don't think I want to deviate from that plan. So maybe I just talked myself into doing the article right here on the podcast, so you got to see it live. Some other things, though, that I know I do, and this might be helpful to you if you're on sabbatical, is I don't just say, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look at these protocols, because that doesn't tell me in the moment, what am I supposed to be doing right now? So I put a couple notes for myself. One was, check out the existing articles in the folder, because I have a folder of some articles that I've collected. I also have some printed articles. I also have a book. So I noted to bring this book that I have that's not the library book from OSU, so I don't mix them up between my library and their library. But it's just a reminder that the research I need to look at lives in these three spots. The articles in the folder, I need to bring this one book, and then I've got some printed ones in my bag. Two other things I know I have to keep top of mind. I'm looking at a couple of articles that don't say explicitly that they're using a narrative methodology, where narrative is kind of the central focus, where we're looking at kind of the pieces of a narrative. So I do have this question, what's narrative about this methodology? So I've got a couple articles I need to just decide, is it doing what I want it to do? But the other thing that is more of a long-term question is the idea is, why is using narrative an appropriate way to study faculty writing processes? So I talked about it being sort of a meta narrative. And actually, while I'm on screen, I'm even going to put that word in there, because when I used it, I'm like, oh, that's maybe a good way to think about it, about narrative or something. So faculty writing narratives. You heard it here first on the podcast. I'm actually like writing on screen. Okay, so I put a little note to myself just to ask myself questions about that. I'm going to probably work 9:30. I put like 11:30 as a tentative lunch, where I fully plan to kind of stay in the library. There's a place to eat. I'm just going to kind of grab a couple things and then keep working. So kind of like a working lunch. Since I'm just looking at articles and that, I can do that and have lunch at the same time. But what I want to flip to after lunch is to spend around an hour and 40 minutes, maybe an hour and a half, being realistic about just how much time I might take for some of these things, on the article that I'm doing on graduate student writing. I've made some really good progress on that article, but I know that I've got like all these other projects pulling at me, and that is one I really wanted to finish this semester, because it's been hanging over my head for a while, but also other people are counting on me to complete it. So that one, I know I want to put in just a little bit of time. And then I kind of set for myself a stopping point of around 2 that day. That's a lot of sitting in the library. Like, my body physically can't just sit there all day long. I'm just kind of not able to do that anymore. But I am also going to take advantage of the fact that I'm closer to a big city. And so I sometimes will say I'm doing some big city errands before I go home, like stuff that I can get there that I can't get where I live. So I've just got a couple of things I need to knock out for that. And all this is to say is that it seems like in this day, when I'm calculating how much writing or how many hours I'm there, let's say I'm there 6 hours or whatever it looks like, or close to it, I'm actually only doing any writing for about an hour and 40 minutes. But I would argue that thinking time, that, kind of decision-making time, looking at models, deciding, yes, I want this, no, I don't want this, and then just doing some initial kind of drafting of what are some questions I might want to ask, what is a good chart that's representing this narrative data, and just starting to make some notes on what that stuff looks like is a good use of time for me for a 2.5 hour project, because it's really kind of we could call it pre-writing work before I build an article of some sort. So where that stuff is going to go is in a Penzu note, of course, because that is the spot that makes the most sense to me. As a side note, I've had some questions about like how I use Asana versus Penzu and what's the difference. And here would be the major difference in it. Penzu is where I do two things. I tend to leave a lot of plans in Penzu, so that's why those of you that can see it on YouTube, you can see it says sabbatical plan, or you see dates. So that's a good spot. Other things that I will do in my Penzu is that's where I do a lot of writing before I make decisions. So it's sort of like a holding spot. Once I get to Asana, I already know in a project, if I list 20 things, I already know I'm going to do them. I just have to check them off. Penzu is more where I explore, like, these are things I have to, I might be thinking about. So for example, thinking about these faculty interview protocols, when I take notes on that stuff, it's just going to stay in Penzu for a little bit. But in Penzu, there is a link. It's a digital link. I will put that in my Asana board. So I can actually like log into Asana, look at a project and say, remember, I wrote that note about that thing like, 20 months ago. Where is it? I could click on it and go to it. So the two of them work in tandem, and I really like the two of them together because for me, they're both free and they've served me well. So if there are any questions for anyone on sabbaticals or time usage, or if you're interested in doing just a half hour quick consult with us about how you might use your sabbatical time wisely, we are open. You can go to Defend, Publish, Lead and click the free consultation, schedule some time with us to talk. I know that a lot of times sabbatical work is isolating, and we've had a lot of people you take advantage of that to just have a quick half hour chat, do a little goal setting, and then go on your way. If you want to work with us on something or do some more in the terms of accountability, we're happy to do it. And happy writing this week.